Welcome back to Nickname versus the World. On the 21st of June, it is International Yoga Day. I read about that and I was thinking, man, there's a day for everything, really, isn't there? I'm actually quite keen to keep doing it. Oops, sorry. International Yoga Day. You know, I really don't care for yoga or Pilates, and I know that there are people that'll swear by it, but not my cup of tea. What I'd really love to see is International Performance Enhancing Drugs Day, where you see like athletes do stupid things like lift 4 reindeer over their head, and just have like an international game of people who are on performance enhancing drugs. Let's just see how far humans can go. Like, man runs 100 meters in 3.4 seconds using performance enhancing drugs. Shortly after has heart attack, but is the fastest man in the world, or woman, or. That would be a day. That would be an international day to celebrate. In today's show, I wanted to chat about cryptocurrency and NFT collapse. In the last couple of weeks, cryptocurrencies, took a dive. And I've been listening to a few people who talk about it, and it's a little bit like playing the stock markets, and it's a little bit like buying into a Ponzi scheme, where the first people in at the top make the money. The people who have the FOMO, fear of missing out, buy in late, and then they get caught with the wave at the end when everyone sells off and the people at the top get rich. So I know that there are a lot of people recently who have lost money, specifically in cryptocurrencies, and it's kind of not surprising. So there was a company in the States, they had two things going. They had an algorithmically based stablecoin. I can't remember the name of the company, and I'm not going to Google it. And then they also had another side of their business which dealt in volatile cryptocurrencies, or high moving, high performing. And the stable coin, which was based algorithmically to stay stable, the algorithm didn't work as it was supposed to. It kept buying and selling and doing all sorts of weird shit. And then the idea of the stable coin being it's based on a specific dollar, which was the US dollar, turned into shit. And then things just, progressively got worse from there. People got less confident in the market, and no money gone. So if you bought in early and sold out before all this happened, you're a clever wee investor. But if you didn't, then you're fucked. But I guess it's like any kind of gambling or any kind of stock market or whatever. Be prepared to lose whatever you put in. And there's no regulation to the market, unlike maybe some banking practices. If you put your money into 90-day bank bills, or you invested it in a specific kind of fund that guarantees, return or whatever it is. Woohoo. So this is mainly happened in the American market, trickled down to the Australian market, trickled down to other countries, blah, blah, blah. And it's just a big stinking sinking hole. And NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which are digital art that are basically signed on the blockchain to say that you own it and you bought it for this much, blah, blah, blah. They took a dive as well. And there's also been an attitude of insider trading with NFT sales, people saying that, hey, this is going to sell, you might want to get in on it tomorrow and then, resell them or whatever. Also, there's no real value in them. These just pictures, Bored Ape Yacht Club, Punk, and other stuff. There's just millions and millions of iterations of these things. Well, not millions, maybe hundreds or thousands. And you buy a JPEG, someone says because it was built or made by this person, it's worth this much. and if you resell it, you might get this much for it. But it's all vaporware. There's nothing to it, and there's no value. There's no cultural value. There's no societal value. There's no real sort of like celebrity behind it, like you'd have with gaming cards or Pokemon. Yeah, I've seen a Pokemon cartoon. And that's it. The long story short is, I knew in November that there was going to be a bust for crypto and NFT, and I talked to many friends about it. And the bust was more of I don't want to say it's a realigning, it's people becoming aware that it was BS. And I think it was inevitable that there'd be investors who lose out on it. What's interesting is that it happened before the stock exchange started tanking as well. So I wonder if in the future, when you see cryptos become volatile quickly, if it's kind of a heads up to volatility in normal trading markets. So that's something interesting to think about if you are in the stock exchange and stock markets and stuff like that. Watch to see what the cryptocurrencies do first before everything goes tits up. But again, I'd probably say be prepared to lose whatever you invest, or whatever the saying is. Me, I'm not an investor. It's I don't have time for that sort of stuff. That would just worry me sick. Watching money that you've saved just turn into negative money you saved, and I think people who invest in that sort of stuff, you've got to have your thumb in a number of pies. You've got to be into financial trading and shit like that to really think that you're going to make it. Now, I did actually I've got the card over here. I went to an NFT conference, lecture, something like that. It was called the Block Party. Block Party? Yeah. And that was actually on the 5th of June. A friend of mine, he was speaking at it. And they were talking about, it was about Maori people, Aotearoa metaverse players, come to share insights, information, and opportunities for the people. So there was one guy there who's actually a tax lawyer or a money business lawyer. He was talking about obviously, paying tax on transferring from one type of crypto to another. And a lot of people were surprised that they were actually not vulnerable, but susceptible to being taxed for some of those things. And there are a lot of shocked people in that audience, I got to say, who probably didn't realize. They thought that, cryptocurrencies and NFTs are this fringe thing that the governments haven't caught up to yet. Lo and behold, they have. Oh dear. So yeah, if you're going to play markets and things like that in cryptos, check if your country actually is watching if you have to pay tax on it. That's quite scary. But yeah, there were a lot of really scared looking people there when they heard that. NFTs, if you buy an NFT to give to someone and it's a gift, great, problem solved. But if you're buying and trading NFTs and speculating on the price of them and trying to earn more, then yeah, you are open to being taxed. And the tax isn't cheap as far as I'm aware. So get an accountant or a business lawyer person. Anyway, yeah. Interesting person who I would love to chat about, and I'm going to because that's what I do. Dave Chappelle. Obviously, he's a very influential stand-up comedian. He has a lot of views about different things. He obviously says controversial stuff, and people get riled. Yeah. You get the idea. when you get to that level, something that's I think is interesting is he's not much of a player on social media, and I totally get it because the amount of crazy messages you must get from people, threats and all that sort of stuff. There's no point putting yourself on a platform, giving people the space and place to send you shitty comments. Now, he talks about stuff that's controversial. He talks about stuff in ways that people get offended. I'm not covering for him. One of his big things he talks about is transgender and how he thinks it's funny. And I mean, he's a stand-up comedian. Whatever happens at the show is for the people at the show. But then, people hear about it outside the show, and then it's out of the context of, comedy. The tricky and worrying thing is that, and this is my perception, is when we go to comedy shows, we hear some jokes and we have some laughs, and usually people think it's about how men and women don't get along and, some dick jokes or some shit jokes or whatever it is, or isn't it ironic how this happens or that happens? We never really get this to this point where people start challenging modes of thought too much. Bill Hicks may sort of contradict that point, but so when you're talking about the transgender issues, there are people out there, there is a minority of people out there that now have a voice or a way to voice their opinions that never used to have. Say go back to the 80s, there was no, or 90s, there was no social media where people could get together and say, hey, I am in this category. This is, the people I belong to. This is how we feel. And for those people to collectively bring their feelings, thoughts, and affect change together. And this is the thing about social media, how powerful it is. It has helped give a voice to minorities or, smaller fringe groups of people. Well, not fringe, but smaller groups of people. Once upon a time, say if you took like comedian Norm MacDonald or Bill Hicks, they probably wouldn't have had the backlash that modern comedians are probably having nowadays. Actually, Jimmy Carr's coming to New Zealand soon, so that'll be interesting. I think I know what he's going to make jokes about. A little predictable, I do see that he watches the news and finds the news articles of a country he's going to and then makes his comedy about it. It is what it is. So nowadays there is a voice for people who are offended by things to raise their voice, and then there are news agencies and companies looking for whoever's yelling the most about, how off-put they are. Now, as I said before, I'm not in anyone's corner saying, yeah, man, make jokes about people, minorities, and it'll be funny, it'll be fine. I'd love to make jokes about anyone and everyone, but sometimes, you got to know when to hold back a little bit. So it's hard for him. The lasers. One of the comments I think someone made, I can't remember who it was, made, the lasers are on him, but he can defeat them. Meaning people's attentions are focused on Dave Chappelle and watching what he says, and he avoids, the blowback from what he talks about. But it's interesting nowadays, I think as a stand-up comedian or anyone who's in the public eye, you may say things like it's just jokes or, it's in the context of comedy. For some people, their lives aren't in comedy. They see anything that rises to the top as potential to influence other people and how they act towards that community. So, and it somewhat normalizes the conversations or the way people have conversations. If you go back into the 70s in New Zealand, 70s or 80s, there used to be a stand-up comedian, and he, John something, I can't remember his last name. and he used to be a comedy character called Fred Dagg. Now, Fred Dagg actually said some awful things about some certain groups of people, but back in that time, that was where people's minds were at. That's how people were accepted, or that's how people had learned. This is acceptable to say things that way. And as we move forward, and we realize, hey, that's actually pretty hurtful shit to say about people. Don't say that. We've realized a little bit about how people in the public eye, who are communicating things, are also normalising other people's expectations and how that they can say it as well. Now, this is probably a bit too deep for me, deeper than I probably want to go in this conversation. It's hard being at the top of your game and then everyone sort of micro-analysing what you do. But I also feel that if you are at the top as well, you kind of have to be mindful about the impact of the things that you say and be aware that, yes, people will take them out of context. Everyone wants to have a laugh and everyone wants to enjoy life, I think. Unless you're from Invercargill. I grew up in Invercargill, so I can make jokes about it. But yeah, anyway, my thought is it hard to be a public figure and say things that you feel and not be cross-examined for them? I don't know. Interesting person of the day. And my last interesting thing I'd love to chat about is health. Health care or health prevention or illness prevention. And a subject, the thing that I really I'm passionate about is mental health and men's mental health. And I've had depression in the past. And I've had, my dark moments. I mean, I won't go into it today. That's probably a thing for the future. But we have a healthcare system, and if you didn't know, in New Zealand, we pay tax and healthcare is free to a certain extent. You can still get health insurance like you could in the United States to pay for things like, say, you need your ankle fixed or whatever. But for the majority of things, in New Zealand, if you're unwell, you can go to a general practitioner and then you'll get assessed. And then if it's an accident, it gets done free. If it's, like in my case, actually, I had a genetic thing. It was my hip. I had to be fixed. It was done on the public system, but it took time to get seen. But something interesting I thought about, and I've heard it in the past, is health care or health prevention. So with mental health, when someone's passed away, I'm trying to say it in a nice way. Yeah, when someone ends their life, we kind of assume that maybe they didn't get the health care they needed at the right time. Or should it have been preventative health care that stopped us getting to that point in the first place? And I wonder if our view of healthcare is you get healthcare only when you're sick. Well, can the system be a little bit more proactive and try and prevent things from happening in the first place? I mean, there are so many things that you can't catch everything. I get that. One of them would be cancers, actually. I'm curious to know. I've had a couple of family members pass away from cancer, and the cancers would have been preventable if we had a continuous screening system for them. Now, I know for women's healthcare, we have screening. They have mammograms and smear tests, and, it's a regular thing. It's almost like if we want to increase the life expectancy of people and, do the right thing, should everyone, when they go see their GP, get a physical every year or every 6 months, whatever it is, and be screened for cancers? And I think Some cancers, if you pick them up soon enough, you can nip it in the bud and move on with life. So is it time that we ask that we have regular screening for cancers in people? I don't know if it gets done in a blood test or if it's a scan or something, or if there are factors that we can look for in advance. Like say someone comes in and there's this in their blood work, and you go, oh, okay, that's a thing we need to check. And if we had a screening for things every year, would we prevent people from needing more serious healthcare down the line? And that's what I would love to see healthcare become, that it's health prevention. I assume that we would save a significant amount of money in the process. But as a society of people, are we capable of doing that yet? On such a bulk scale. Man, I'm losing my voice. I should stop talking so much. So yeah, we pay in New Zealand, we pay taxes, and our healthcare is free. So should maybe more of our funding go towards prevention versus, care? There's still some situations where care is essential over prevention. But yeah, I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are. If you know me, send me a message or an email or a text or whatever. I'd love to know your thoughts, and I'll talk about it in one of the upcoming episodes. Okay, funny shit for the day. I wanted to talk about interesting word of the day. And one of them, interesting word, I think actually it is the word of the day for the 21st, is prescience. Is the ability to see or anticipate the future. Now, if you were curious about how to use that word, George Orwell wrote a bit of fiction and non-fiction about seeing how society was going to evolve, and he predicted how some systems will work. So he has prescience, or whatever the adjective of that is. But Nostradamus, he prognosticated future events, meaning he had some thoughts in his head, he felt some things, and he looked into his magic hat of tricks and said, I think that this is going to happen. So Orwell, who's an author, he based some of his ideas, and there'll be people who debate this, he based his ideas on how systems were functioning. He evaluated them and looked at how they would evolve and what outcomes could be possible because of it. So that was prescience. Whereas Nostradamus was like, I believe that in the year 1883 that there will be a great plague of stuff and people will die and it'll be gloom. Or in 2012 that the world is going to end. It didn't end, by the way. That was the Mayan calendar thing, but I think he actually said some things in his Nostradamic prognostications of future events. Prognostication, that's a word you don't use very often either. Anyway, prescience. See how you can use that in a sentence. If you're listening to the show and you know me, please feel free to share a link to the Spotify show. Share it with your friends if you've got somebody else who's interested in intellectual, interesting things. It doesn't mind the odd swear word. It doesn't mind the sound of my voice. And yeah, sharing is caring, my friends. Sharing is caring. I'm Nick Neem. Thank you for listening to the show. See you on the next one.